Today we're doing some Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition, and today we're tackling experience and levels. So this is something that I like to call the sort of thing that a DM needs to have sorted out before we start playing checklist. And this is number 1 on that list. Levels and experience. So from the DM's guide, let's have a look and see what everyone says about what experience and what XP really are. Well, there's no definition. Not here. Explains how it works. It doesn't actually say what it is we're looking at. The better definition is actually over here in the Player's Handbook, page 106, where it explains a lot more about experience than what most players will ever know. Specifically, that you're going to receive experience points for treasure, for opponents captured or slain, solving or overcoming problems, and all the things that are involved in being a character in the day-to-day. Explains that high scores might be useful sometimes, and then he goes in to defend why we have experience points. Acquisition of gold pieces to experience, and so on. Whether you agree with that or not, well, it's the rules. But it makes sense. This is sword and sorcery, this is full-on fantasy, and they wanted everyone to go out and look for the treasure, to overcome the monster, the beastie, the maze, and then get the reward at the end. And sometimes you don't always have lots and lots and lots and lots of creatures to fight, and in 1st edition AD&D, if you get involved with lots and lots of creatures, you are going to die. So that there's 10 orcs, or 20 orcs, each of 13 points of experience each, might be protecting 1,000 experience points worth of treasure. So what's more important? The measly XP from the monster, or the horde? Same too with the dragon. Dragons can have up to from 6,000 or so experience points at the big level. And away we go. And then their treasure is going to be in tens of thousands. But before we continue on, we need to really work out what it is to go up a level and what the experience is for. So onwards and upwards. This is going to get bumpy. So level advancement is one of those things that need to get sorted out as to how it's going to be handled, because there are some character classes that go up rather quick and some that don't to begin with. Then others have the middling levels where they go up very quick, and sometimes they stagnate. If you have a look at the 100,000 challenge, 7th level Paladin, 8th level Magic User. Even a Ranger at 100,000 XP is 7th level. The beauty of the experience point system within the D&D is it's very balanced, in that you've got some that struggle to begin with, and then cruise through the middling levels, and you've got others that breeze through the first few levels, and apprenticeships almost, and then start to slow down. Then you've got others that are on a very even keel, where it's a regular increase throughout the whole career progression. So we've established that an experience point is a reward for the character performing acts of heroism or problem solving and daring do and so on, as well as good gameplay from the player. But what really happens once that fighter gets 2001 experience points, or the thief gets 1251. We'll have a look at that in a few moments. But first, we just want to have a look at how level progression goes with one particular class. We're looking at the fighter at this stage, which has a pretty even type of advancement. And with this, you're looking at 13 points of orc at low levels, making quite an impact, versus at the higher end, it doesn't mean too much, which is right, because at 9th level, even 10 orcs is not even worth the hirelings and henchmen that are surrounding the character would well and truly stop those 10 orcs from getting anywhere near the 9th level character. So the way that the level progressions work is obviously as you become more experienced, it becomes a little bit slower. But there is that point often where it's nice and smooth, either at the beginning, in the middle, or like the thief, pretty much along the entire career. Someone like a cleric, they obviously get special abilities and spells as they progress in levels. So gaining a level is really important. And this is where the DM, as we said before, has to work out how it's all going to happen. So now that we've sort of explained a little bit about experience points, let's talk about how you get them. As we said, conquering monsters. You can get them from solving puzzles, achieving objectives, and overcoming problems of any sort. And also through your class profession, using skills that are part of your class. So all of that makes up more points than just killing a single orc, or killing even a dozen orcs, or even a red dragon sometimes. The cleric that does what the cleric's supposed to do and heals an entire village of sick, bringing the faith and the light and so on, may get more experience points for that than anything else. It doesn't make for stirring heroic fantasy, as Mr. Gygax points out, but it does what they're supposed to do. So just like how a good rock and roll song needs rhythm and melody, gaining levels requires time and money. So it's the amount of money by the amount of time, but the tricky bit is calculating how much time. Now this is all using the Gygaxian theory of level advancement, so we'll start with that before we go on any other conversations down the line. So in the Gygaxian theory of level advancement, we sort of take an idea that we progress and then we have to spend time and money for training. Sometimes you can just get your experience points, you get your hit points, you get your class bonuses and benefits and so on. But then you need to then engage in training at some point in the near future, which can be done off time and whilst in between adventures, but still time and money. So let's have a look at one of the more confusing things around. So first, he looks at 3 elements. So for every adventure that the character goes on, or for every session of experience point distribution, which doesn't always have to be at the end of an adventure, but at every point where the DM has assigned the experience points to the characters, for each character, he splits the 3. So the DM splits into 3. One for how well they've kept their alignment, how they've performed as their class, and then general role playing. So in each of those, the DM assigns a letter for excellent, superior, fair, poor, and for some reason those letters equate to a number: 1, 2, 3, 4. You could bypass the middleman and just go straight to giving 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you could assign the letters, and then for every letter, assign the number. So in the first session of experience point distribution, a cleric could receive a 1 for alignment because they've acted admirably within their alignment. a 1 for their class, but the role playing was very ordinary, and they were power gaming and they were metagaming, so they get a 3. So for that particular session, it's 1 plus 1 plus 3, which is 5, divided by 3, which gives you a number. So you do that for each adventure, or each distribution of experience points. And then, once you've reached your level, you average them all out. So then you come up with a number, which could be any one between 1 and 4. And that's the number of weeks that it takes for training. So the number of levels that you're currently at, times by that modifier, times by the 1500 tells you how much money. So from there we have the weeks and we have the money. So our first level thief with 1251 experience points, that's done everything right, takes 1 week for training, and it's 1500 draw pieces. So 1500 gold pieces, which is more than the 1251 experience points. But that's why we have a party. And the party will just be funding some things along the way. So we can see some pitfalls with this particular system. It's a little clunky and it seems very outdated by the modern standards of just assigning numbers and away we go. And here's your experience points. You've gone up a level, roll the dice, here's the benefits, and away we go. We don't have to worry about anything like training or any of that, which is fine. If that's how you want to handle experience points, you're not losing anything by doing that, and you're not gaining anything either. But what this particular system sort of highlights is that the character is going to be challenged by alignment, by class, and the player is going to be challenged with role-playing. So that's an interesting way of looking at it from the point of view of if we use those measures, alignment, class, and role-playing, then we're asking the players to be challenged in that regard. So as DMs, you're going to put out some questionable alignment options for them to choose from. Yes, they've been following their alignment. Yes, they had the crisis of faith to do this, that, or the other. You're going to throw out the poor masses on their way to a pilgrimage, and the cleric and the paladin help heal them, look after them, feed them, clothe them, give them their horses or whatever as part of their class, and so on. It's interesting. This isn't, of course, explained to the players at all, so this is something that the DM gets to judge them on, in that they don't know what's exactly happening. But basically the question is, have they been performing their functions well? Yes, no, a bit, not at all. And how you gauge these is entirely up to you. You're not beholden to forcing everyone to assign voices or anything to play in character, but as long as they roleplay well enough, or as well as they need to, reward them for it. So just as people don't exist in vacuums, the player characters are exactly the same. Thieves belong to guilds, magic users belong to schools, clerics belong to monasteries, monks belong to monasteries. Clerics have their faith or similar faiths. They might have a related faith or related school that they can go to for additional training. It's not always going to be the same faith, but it's close enough, and so on, like an associated school that they belong to. Same thing with magic users and illusionists. They might have all sorts of different arrangements with various masters and teachers along the way. So there's plenty of reason as to how these people get put into the world with the characters, and as DMs we can choose to use or ignore as much of this as we wish. So there are lots of different ways that experience points in the past have been handled, from first edition all the way through, with more emphasis on monsters, with more emphasis on treasure, with more emphasis on role-playing and ability and breaking things down. But pretty much what you're looking at is using as a guide exactly what we've been looking at today, where you've got kind accomplishing the mission, overcoming tasks, of course defeating monsters, as well as the treasure. Treasure is important, especially in this version of Dungeons & Dragons, because it's all about the heroic fantasy. It's all about getting out there and going for the big score. Whether you're a thief, trying to improve your stats, and so on, it's all important. The assassin, the monk, the fighter, the magic user, all of this, so that we can keep going. So what the DM has to work out is how this level progression is going to happen. Up until they get to their name level, which is usually around the 9th, 10th level for most characters, then they need to have someone to train them. Once they get to 10th level, it's just all about spending the gold, which they usually have in abundance. So from the Dungeon Master's point of view, we need to work out how we're doing leveling up. And you might just say, you might be happy with, and the players might be happy with, yep, when you get your experience points, you go up a level. That's it, done and dusted. Just as you'll assign experience points to treasure based on the difficulty that the players had. So a party of 4th levels up against 30 orcs could be an even fight, could be a little bit more in favour, that's fine. Whatever they get or steal is going to be valued 1 for 1. But if it's just a couple of orcs or just something quite low level, a single ogre versus a party of 5th levels, that sort of thing, then the points for the experience points to gold ratio is going to be very low. So what the players can do to help the DM is just when the next time the DM says, right, it's going to take 3 days to travel between point A and point B, and then pop, they're just going to lose those 3 days. Make sure that the players get in there and you all say, right, when we stop, we're going to do this. Because you know that every night and every morning the magic user is going to be looking through his or her spell books, and especially if they're going to change the spells that they've already got memorized, they'll need to relearn those. And that's any part of 15 minutes per spell level and so on. So you could have a magic user or a cleric down for almost an hour in the morning. So what are the fighters going to do? What's the thief going to do? Sit there and they can sit there and play with their little puzzle locks to keep their fingers nimble. The fighters can practice sword play with each other, or do some training and some practicing and just doing some overall sword work, cleaning the armor, keeping the weapons in good condition. All of that helps build the character, and as well as work with the DM to sort of allow them to say, right, here's what the players are doing whilst the downtime is occurring. And then it feels like that the players and the characters are progressing. So when you think about it in terms of, as I've mentioned earlier, the alignment, the class, and the role-playing aspect, some of that is up to the DM, some of that is up to the player. And if the DM is planning on doing, nope, we're going to have schools, we're going to have training elements, and we're going to have military barracks, and we're going to have guilds, and we're going to have schools for magic users, and we're going to have churches and temples for the cleric that they have to go to all the time, then the players need to be on board with that as well. And that's where, as we said, it's the sort of thing that the DM needs to have sorted out at the beginning rather than wait. Now there is a facility for the players to say that they sort of quote unquote self-train for the first 2 or 3 levels, but at some point they're going to need to be able to move on with the bigger stuff. Though it's widely known that the first couple of spell levels for clerics are just through procedure, through ritual, and through general prayer and meditation. Once you start dealing in 3rd, 4th, 5th level spells, then you're looking at from parts of the actual deity to deliver those spells, and then at spell levels 6 and 7, they come from the deity. So you're looking at having to build those bonds with that religion, which is good. So a lot of this really doesn't matter for Having said all that, some of it doesn't really matter for like the multi-class. When you've got a fighter magic user where the fighter class is only going to be to 5th level, it's one of those things, you know. And elves who live for 1500 years suddenly have to worry about 20 years worth of training. Nah, they don't worry about that, and that sort of thing. And that's part of the strength and the weakness of the multi-class characters. They gain experience slower, but then on the flip side, they don't actually feel the effects of that length of time. Whereas the human goes out, and if you're going to spend 3 weeks going from 3rd level to 4th level, well, it's taking you X amount of time to get there, plus the 3 weeks, and then eventually it's going to be, you know, months of training and so on. So, and that's where the DM again needs to sort of come in and say, well, this is how we're going to progress. So hopefully we've given enough food for thought and made everybody sort of question how the adventures progress and how experience points are doled out, and then how the way that the characters play affects how they grow, which all sort of makes sense. So I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank everyone for watching and supporting the channel, which is great. And when we've got something else, I know that it's troubling times at the moment, but we'll see what we can try and keep going and put out as many of these to keep everybody entertained as much as possible. So thanks for watching, and catch you around.